boys and girls, it's Miss Frannis, and we're here with another genre, and our genre today is historical fiction. And of course, historical fiction books have some historical truth to them. Usually there's a historical figure or possibly a historical place, but there's some fiction in there too, so the story's slightly made up. And our story today, that's historical fiction, is called George Washington's Teeth. It's by Deborah Chandra and Madeline Comra. Pictures are by Brock Cole. And it says, all of his life, George Washington had problems with his teeth and worked hard to save them. This story is based on what really happened to George and his teeth. The Revolutionary War, George hoped would soon be won, but another battle with his teeth had only just begun. George Washington rushed into town. The dentist heard him shout. "Hold still," he said, then gave a yank. A rotten tooth popped out. All that night, George tossed and moaned. Another tooth was sore. But at the dawn, he saddled up and galloped off to war. George reached New York as British ships invaded every port, preparing for a fierce attack. His soldiers built a fort. Inside, he rubbed his swollen gums with soothing oil of myrrh, until a sentinel cried out, "Here comes the British, sir!" Charging on the field, George thought, "Oh, there's something in my mouth." He spat into his handkerchief. Oh, another tooth came out. "This can't be happening," George gasped. "What if someone should see? If word got out I'm losing teeth, my men would laugh at me." While no one looked, he wrote a note his dentist would receive. "Please come," it said. "I'll need your help when I get home on leave." Back at home, George lost more teeth, till he had only 10. "Oh, Martha dear," George cried, "I fear I'll never eat again." She fed him mush and pickled tripe, but when guests came to dine, he sneaked one of his favorite nuts. Then he had only 9. George crossed the icy Delaware with 9 teeth in his mouth. In that cold and pitchy dark, 2 more teeth came out. Snow fell on George at Valley Forge. His blue coat hung in tatters. By then, he only had 7 teeth that couldn't even chatter. Yet bravely George led forth his men, coat and pigtail flying, while cannons boomed. He held his jaw and groaned, "Oh, I think I'm dying." The redcoats fled. George won the war. When he returned alive, Martha checked for 7 teeth, but counted only 5. He hid the evening of her ball, ashamed his friends would see. That night the dentist came again. George lost another 3. Poor George had 2 teeth in his mouth. The day the votes came in, the people had a president, but one afraid to grin. A portrait artist came to George. He said, "I know a trick. I'll pad your mouth with cotton balls to puff your sunken lips." George stood up to have a look. He fell back on his fanny. "It doesn't look like me," he roared. "It looks like Martha's granny." He yanked the cotton from his mouth, then gasped, "What have I done?" That cotton held a rotten tooth. Now George had only one. George still had that tooth that night. A knock came at the door. "I've brought false teeth," the dentist called. "Teeth that won't get sore." George put them in, but when he smiled, spring snapped against his tongue. Out flew those teeth. "Ah!" George shrieked. "They've knocked out my last one." "Oh no," George moaned. "I'm toothless." He kept his mouth shut tight. He couldn't sleep. He paced the floor and prayed with all his might. "If only I had teeth," thought George. He pondered what to do. "Ah," he cried, "all my old teeth might help me make something new." He searched Mount Vernon's bedrooms, the pantry parlor's halls, through shelves, desk drawers, and the musty floor of every horse's stall. George found no teeth. "Alas, they're gone." A great sob shook his shoulders. Through tears he peered in one last chest, leaped and yelled, "My molars!" With plaster and those teeth he found, George poured a sample mold that showed the dentist how to make false teeth George hoped would hold. The dentist took strong hippo tusk and carved a set to size, each tooth secured with screws of gold that lit up George's eyes. Can you guess the story's end? Those new teeth fit just right, and round the ballroom with his friends, George danced all through the night. And then, since this is a historical fiction book, they actually do have real historical facts in the back of the book with the important events of George Washington's life from his own letters, diary, and accounts. And at the very end, we actually see a set of George Washington's teeth. So that is what they actually look like. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our historical fiction book. What you're going to do today is you are going to compare and contrast George Washington and you. So the character, of course, is George Washington, and then you can draw yourself there. And you can put George Washington, a character in this book, and then your name are alike and different in many ways. We both do what? And however, we're different because. So you can fill out how you're like George Washington and how you're different. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed our historical fiction. I'll see you next week. Bye.